Hello and welcome to the Reinventing Education podcast. I'm your host, Brendan O'Leary. I'll be joined by my co-host, Rob McLeod, soon. Today we're interviewing Hans van Heesewijk, who, along with a group of teachers, founded the Agora School system in the Netherlands. It's a school that has no fixed classes or curriculum, and students are encouraged to pursue their own passions and interests under the guidance of personal coaches. So join us as we chat to Hans and Pete Merry of Ubiquity University, who we spoke to a few episodes back, whose children attend the school. It's a really interesting insight into a unique child-centered approach to education.
Yeah. So if we talk a little bit about maybe how the Agora approach first emerged, what's a bit of the history behind this, about the need for this approach to education, or
maybe a little bit about Hans and his background and history in education.
Yeah, please.
So I've been retired after 43 years of being in educational surroundings, and I entered the school life because my own student time was terrible, and then I thought it had to be better. And I tried to get it better, because when I studied for a teacher, they told me a big lie. And the lie was that the student, the pupil, was central. But that's the biggest lie I ever heard, because that was not true. They are talking about children, but the system is central. Until I got acquainted with Agora, I tried to reform the system, but it is impossible because it's so combined with everything in the community. So it's very difficult. You can try, you can do your utmost, cost many effort, but in a while it will return back to the root of the system. And that is, you have to organize. You told about the curriculum. That's not knowledge. That is standard thought of a couple of people, and we think that is what we have to learn. So don't touch the curriculum, because then old values will shift, and then what then? You lose control. And that's the second part of the problem. You have to control the children. You have to get them in the school. You have to put them in behind the desk. You have to shut up and listen. And they have to wait until something will pass with it, which is for that particular child interesting. And then some pupil wait 4, 5, or 6 years, and then all the troubles are over, and then they can start learning. So that's what I experienced at the end of my career. And I'm very proud of all the colleagues I had, and try to do their utmost to do something, because they all know, mostly they love children. And you can see that they are getting disappointed because they didn't get the response of the children they ask for, they deserve. Because between them and the children, there is the curriculum, and there is the form in which you have to pass all those years. So in 2017, I met Peter, and Peter went with his eldest son to a school in the south of the Netherlands, and there he made Chef Drumme. He was a principal of a school in Roermond, and with Chef Drumme, Peter came to Culemborg, where my school was, and then they started a little fire here. And that fire struck me too. And when I stopped with my work, it was still burning. And that was when I stopped in 2020. So I was able to lead a part of my school in a way of Agora for 3 years. And we started with 55 children. And when I left, there were 150. And now there are, I believe, 260. So it's still growing. And we were with 4 other schools, the second group who started with Agora, and now in the Netherlands there are approximately 24 schools, and some schools are trying to get Agora in their big community as well. I think there will be 3 more next year.
Yeah, and what are some of the principles that define the Agora approach? So from what I've read, there's this idea of like differences in terms of how different students learn, teacher discernment or intuition or adaptability, and ultimately a very developmental science basis for what matters for students. Could you explain to someone who hasn't heard of this before what distinguishes or what some of the special features of an Agora type school would be?
Yeah, I think the children can tell what they want to learn. They are free in choosing those things they like to learn to get better. There are some rules, and that they have to do their utmost, and they have to become on the next level. And the teacher follows the process and open ways to do it better, and closes ways which distract the student for getting lost in all the things there are, which are interesting too, but then it will be a big mess at the end. So that's the main role of the teacher in relation with the child and all the things the child brings. Character, his interests, his fear, his everything. And his parents. That's because parents are very important by Agora, because we said at the beginning, we are going to do it together. We are having a party when we are successful, and we mourn when we have no success at all together. And that was a kind of promise we made at the start of every child. We made acquaintance with each other. We tried to hear what were the expectations of the children and their parents. And then we got a conversation to do that as good as possible, to know each other and to promise each other we will do our utmost. And that would give not only the student, the school, but also it gave the parents an assignment. And that was very, very special, because the whole day there were parents in the school. Once I asked a girl, because her mother was in the school very often, I asked her, is that because the girl was 14, and normally 14-year-old children are ashamed for their parents, so they won't have them in the neighborhood of the school. And I asked the girl, is that a problem for you? Your mother is here all the time. No, she said. No, of course. When she walks through the hallway, that's a problem, because then the students of the other parts of the school could see them. That was for her annoying, but when her mother was in the part of the school where Agora was, then it was fine. So that's very nice. Yeah, and for the rest, we had no school schedule. Children had to be in the school at a certain time, have to work at school for 5.5 hours. They had to read half an hour a day, because after the break in the midday, at the end of the morning, they had to reshuffle their mind and had to read for half an hour or meditate or whatever, but for itself, no screens whatsoever. And after that, they started again. And every child came 2.5 square meters of the school to build their own desk and their own place to be happy. So there were boys who put there a desk and a chair, and that was it. And other ones built a house there, or a double bed to read on top and study under. It was one, when you entered the room of Agora, it was one big mess. It had to be clean, but everyone had his own part. And I believe that the two boys of Peter, they just needed a desk. Next to them, there was a girl who built a house with a mailbox and a bell to enter. It was quite unique. Oh yeah, and there was a boy who his dad saw off the front of a car, and he built a desk in the dashboard of the car. Nice.
Well, Hans, remember that also had his bearded dragon there for a while.
Oh yeah. He
had a big reptile box
on
his desk with this bearded dragon.
We were worried about the alarm system in the night and in the holidays, but he was allowed to bring his dragon. Yeah.
Or you're looking at time and space, and those are two things that isn't even on the radar of most schools, that handing over time to children, handing over space to children, as well as handing over I guess what you call the challenges.
Yeah.
I'm just interested in how those challenges kind of evolved. What would that look like when a teacher was working with a student to try and work out what they were going to do?
The children had access to the agenda of the teacher, and the students were obliged to make appointments in the agenda of the teacher. And so there were regular appointments together, and beside those one-to-one meetings, the teacher walked around his own children, because every teacher was coach of approximately 18 to 22 children. So that was his group. And his group was quite diverse because every age, from children who started in the school for the first time, and at the end, children who had to do their exam at the end. So there was quite difference in age and also in level. So there were very, very smart kids together with children who had to do their utmost to get a result at a certain level.
I'm just trying to imagine what these challenges look like. Were they mostly student created projects? Is that the kind of inquiries that they were carrying out? And then teachers would help them to create questions and decide where to go next?
Yeah, the children knew when he chooses his subjects, it had to be various issues because it not only art,
Sure.
Also some technique or ethics or philosophy or of those. So together they had to be safeguarded that the students choose various subjects. So not to be learning in one direction. Also learn the child who he was and what he would like to be when he was in the community and find a job which fits education, which fits. Because that's not such a good explanation, but you understand what I mean?
Absolutely. It's fascinating. It's such an unusual approach. And yeah, the idea of guiding the students through, did the teachers maybe suggest projects for them?
For some children, that was very necessary because not everyone had a big scale of things he could choose out. So there were most of the children, you have to help them find a project that the child liked. That search was nice as well. And most of the challenges failed. And that was good. And that was very good because it learns what fits you, tests the relation between the teacher and the child. Yeah, that was quite nice to see that. And when the challenge was finished and the child was satisfied and the teacher was satisfied, that was a feast. That was a big party. And
nice.
Maybe I can give you some examples, Brendan, from challenges my kids did. So the eldest, who is now, by the way, studying international business and event management for esports in London. One of the projects he did early on was to lead the building of a computer for VR. They would be able to have like a computer with VR in the room. And, he was studying at the university level. So he was given the challenge not to build it himself, but to lead a team of people, find all the parts, coordinate, having it built, etc. My youngest, who's just in his first year at the moment, I was asking him yesterday, what are his challenges? He's doing 2 individual ones, which are language-based challenges. So he's teaching himself Spanish and he's teaching himself Scottish Gaelic.
Wow.
Now find a school where you'd be able to do that latter one. And, whether he ends up speaking it fluently is not really the point. It's being exposed to Scottish Gaelic is a completely different structure of language than anything else, and it does something with your brain when you have to engage a completely different form of language in terms of the way even the words are built up and things. And then he's also doing a challenge at the moment about the body, about the human body. So he's into sports and stuff as well, which ties in very well to biology. And he'll probably go out with the person he's doing it with to a nice museum that they have here around the body. He's completed a challenge around trying to create the ideal profile for a football referee. So he went out and he watched videos of like many of the top referees, did some research on it, and then created his ideal profile and then ranked the current referees by that profile, for example.
Fantastic. Are those all completely individual or small group? So you have many of these running at the same time?
Yeah, we started with one big room with 55 children. But and most of the time it was quiet and the children did their best at their own place. But I can remember the first year we had in the room next of the group, we had a board meeting. We were there for 2 hours and there was not a moment I had to say to the children, do your best, because they did their own job. But when the group was growing, there was some difficulties to get a base atmosphere. So you have some students who they're getting bored, and they ask attention from the neighbors, so that the teachers were quite busy to restore the Agora order. I believe now they had more old classrooms, so there you can see the system is tries to get it Agora back in form. So you have to work hard to make this revolution a success.
Yeah, often a student will have a couple of challenges ongoing at the same time. I mean, Joshua, I think, is doing 4 different challenges in parallel at the moment, 2 individual and a couple with different, one with one other person, one with 2 other people. And they have this challenge monitor, which they have to fill in, which describes, what's the end result going to be? What are you expecting to learn while you're doing it? They have to run it by the coach first, and they kind of sign off on it, and then you can start your challenge.
So I have 2 questions, both about negotiation. One from the student teacher side. So you mentioned, students can't only focus in one specific direction. There needs to be some variety. I'm curious if the school does have not a curriculum, but sort of an overarching idea or a set of areas or a set of competencies that throughout the school year or the school career, students need to engage in these. And the second piece is the negotiation. Hans, as you mentioned, the system trying to find its way back in. There's still standardized tests for these students at the end. They still are part of the Dutch school system. So how have you been able to meet the needs of that system you're existing within and still negotiating and fighting for your autonomy? So what's the school's sort of requirements or maybe background framework that the students do need to work through to ensure a balance of disciplines or areas of interest? And then how has the school managed to negotiate itself within the demands of the larger Dutch school system?
Yeah, there was in the room there was a big globe, and on the globe I had a colleague who built that globe, and it was not only a globe, but on that globe you could see the 5 different subjects you can divide the world into: the ethical way, the technical way, the science way. The children had to define their subject. The child had to find this to do with science, or this part has to do with ethics. So he had to be aware about those subjects. On the other hand, every child knew that at the end he had to do some tests, the exam. He had to operate in the law. We always said it's a revolution, but we have to work in the law. So we have to follow what is needed. And that was in itself a big challenge as well. The thing what was the most important, it was belief in the children, that they were smart enough that they know at some point, now I had to start preparing for an exam. We didn't say them that they have to do that in the 3rd year of the 4th year or the 6th year. They could start that part of their school being at the moment they want. So there were children who started already from the first day they were on school with their preparation of their exams. I think of those children were involved by what parents and their family said you had to do in the school, but they were allowed to do that. When they wanted to do that, they were allowed to do that. And there were children who did their own ideas and challenges a year before they started to do their exam. And one of the possibilities Agora had, you didn't have to do your exam in 1 year. You could the half of your subjects in the year before the end of the school and the other half in the end, what you want. So the children are allowed to make their own choices in that. And also the level they wanted, and the level that fits the students. So there were children who would get a result with various levels, but that is allowed in the Dutch law. So, but I know schools who do that. We did that. That's whole process, was quite exciting, and because there were doubts by the children. Do I make the best efforts to do that? By the parents, by the environment of the children, the families, the neighbors. They said you were experimenting with children, but that was not the fact. We were believing children. When I stopped, I gave every child a medal, and on that medal is the text, you were an Agora hero and not a guinea pig. So that was the difference.
One of the senses I have is just, this isn't just a change for the school system. This isn't just a change for the role of the teachers. From what I understood, when a student is new to school, there's the brain boot camp. And I was very interested, at least the way that Peter worded it, was that the students are de-schooled and need to unlearn the expectations they've had in school. And that the school basically says, we are not going to teach you. You are going to learn to teach yourselves. What would that brain boot camp look like to prepare students for these new norms or expectations on them?
It's just like the curse on a record. I have a grandchild who is 6 years now. I brought him to his school. Before you go to the primary school, you have to do tests in the Netherlands. I've once said, when you want to have a child, you have to not to test on DNA, but on which level will you end your school. That's insane. So they're going to their school, getting in the system, and at the end of this year, when my grandson isn't able to read at a certain level, he will be put away aside. And when he has the good level, he will go to the top of the possibilities. The guy is 6. So when you are brainwashed for several years and you come to the next school, and then they are saying by Agora, forget all that. For some students, it costs 2 years to get out of that burned-in system thinking. And there I saw successful children who were struggling with Agora for more than 2 years, fighting with themselves to know themselves and to believe that they were able to get successful. They were told for more than 8 years they were losers and punished with grades when they were not good enough. They were written in red, and otherwise they were written in green. And I can assure you that a normal child will act after half a year that approach. They close themselves for influences from school, from this learn, instead of that they learn how to be themselves and create their own possibilities and create their own future. There's a big discussion in the Netherlands about, Rob, you're in Belgium. You said next to the Netherlands, but that is not completely correct. It is far from the Netherlands, because the way children think in the Netherlands, they want to be independent. They're not led. You have to do some effort to bring a Dutch child from A to B, because the Dutch child will say why. Not only when he's 4 years old, but also when he's 14 years old. Why? And you have to have a relation and bring them. In Belgium, it's quite different. Now there is a PISA, a big institution that compares countries in which level children read or have knowledge about science and mathematics. And in that comparison, the Dutch is now not so very good. I studied the questions about the PISA. The PISA research gives questions to the children, and those questions are made in university. Very beautiful questions. And you have to do your utmost to understand what they want you to answer. That's quite an effort. I'm not such a big fool, but I have to do my utmost to answer one of those questions, and for sure that is the correct answer. And so there are lots of questions are very difficult. The PISA is given to 5,000 Dutch students, and the school in which those tests were done, they get a little financial money, and the teachers are said you have to find some children in your class who do the test, and the children becomes a little present when they have finished the test, a little present. And then you would imagine a Dutch child starts with his first question and thinks, oh, that's quite difficult. Okay, I think it's that. But after the 7th question, you think it's too difficult and I don't want to have the present. So you make your tests and you give it back to the teacher. And I think one of the biggest problems of the test is that you are testing a Dutch guy, not an average school child. So when you come from Singapore or Japan or China or Belgium, you have to make those questions you have to do your best because otherwise you will fail enormously. That's not a question in the Netherlands. So that's a kind of mentality. But it won't say that in the Netherlands the education is bad, because I think we have very small countries. We have big efforts with very happy people. Very happy children. We're one of the most, the top of the world of the most happy children in the world. They are quite successful when they are ready on the school.
And interesting that, okay, so we didn't do so well on PISA, or we don't feel that the school system is really working for our children, but instead of changing and adapting ideas more like Agora and more child-centered, we go the other way and say, no, the problem is that we're just not doing enough drilling. We're just not testing the children enough. Whether we're doing well or badly, the solution is always more of that more traditional kind of system.
Which fails again, because when you drill them, then there will be more children who get out of the system. You have to do something with those children that costs lots of money. So you get all those children together who fall out of the system, put them in a school, and you put in much money, more money, and it's not successful because there's not the belief that those children wants to learn. In Agora, we were sure that every child wants to learn. Every child, not at the time you want. Or the curriculum says you have to do that now. But every child wants to. And when you believe that, it gives faith to the children and they will be successful. And you have only to be around those children, the teacher, the school, the environment, the parents. When they fall, you can pick them up, stand straight up and believe in your own possibility. That is the main problem in education in Holland.
I think that word trust, whenever we talk about child-centered education, progressive education, the word trust comes up very, very quickly. And the system you're describing, as you say, really trusts people and thinks that people at their core are good and want to learn and want to help each other. Is there a hope to make the wider system be more hopeful and trusting in people? Is there a way to do that?
There is a union in the Netherlands. All the schools are a member of that union. That union has a strategical document. The biggest part of that document you can put in the mission of Agora. So everyone wants this. Everyone. But the system tells them different things. So now Agora has some success and the children are successful and have wonderful results. They go to their schools with joy. Parents are very happy and they say, I have a different child. Now there's a moment that we hope that people can listen to those things, that it is possible. The Ministry of Education is interested in what's happening there. And they are now asking the Agora schools, give us proof that it works. Find a way to explain us that you are successful. Not only by the exams, but because I think Agora is the answer of very many questions. Success, happiness, the dropout problem, the Agora is an answer to that too. We think for some children, they are better off by learning for a small part of their time in the school, but at home in their own environment as well. To combine that, we think that could be very successful. Because now there are more than 70,000 children who are in the Netherlands not attending a school. They're just sitting home and think they are losers. And I think you can combine and make a connection with those children, you can be successful. So there is a movement in the Netherlands, it's called Agora Underground, which is trying to do that. And that gives some children hope that, okay, I'm not a loser. I can still achieve what I want.
I mean, there's also things like bullying, for example, massively reduced in Agora.
Yeah, that's not necessary at all. The children they feel safe in the school. When the children came to the school, they put out their shoes. It came in clothes which was not allowed by the community or the rest of the school. The slippers,
Sloppy house clothes.
Yeah, because they feel at home. You could be between the walls of Agora who you were.
That's a very important idea, again, in student-centered, child-centered, that you bring all of yourself to school. Like, every part of you is important. And we've talked a lot on the podcast about that idea. More traditional schools says parts of you are not okay in school or acceptable. You have to leave that outside.
Certainly when you are in your 12, 13, 14 years, you have to find an example. What can I be? You have no idea what you can become, but you have to experience with that. Who am I? And then you need to have a safe environment to explore that. When COVID came, that was not a problem for Agora because the children could work on their challenges as well. But the biggest problem was the lack of meeting each other. That was the biggest problem of COVID. So that part, Agora children were suffering as well.
Hans, was talking about trust. And one of the hardest things, I was obviously there from the beginning. So Finla, our oldest, had been for 2 years in the traditional system and then was showing symptoms of burnout. And that's why I kind of went to look for this alternative. And in the traditional system, you've got an app, basically, and it has your grades, and the grades keep getting updated after the test. And that's what everyone's looking at the whole time. That's the parents' kind of, in a way, illusory reassurance that the child is doing well and, will end up having a bright future because the grades are okay in the app. There's no grades at Agora. There's no homework. The things you have to hold on to as a parent, like in the traditional, they're gone. You have no idea how your child is performing. Absolutely none, except, of course, the core, which is you see them as a human being and how they grow and develop. But for a lot of parents, that's really tough. And the biggest question parents have is my child going to get their diploma? Now, imagine the first years we were in, no Agora student had got to the point of taking their exam yet. So we were, oh my God, can they do this and pass their exams? And they did, and they do. But for a parent in our culture who needs some kind of reassurance or control that their child's going to be a success at school, I mean, it's a big challenge for the parents as well.
In the beginning, brave parents as Peter, very much to overwin my own doubts because I was victim of the system as well. After 40 years in education, to throw away all those so-called certainties and start all over again, that was quite an adventure. And then you needed every well-thinking people around you. And so I formed a group of parents in which we tried to find the questions and some answers. So that was quite a nice experience. Yeah.
I'm interested in teachers in the sense that, of course, as you said, most teachers love children. They're in the education for a good reason, but putting them in an environment like Agora, which is so free, so open, how do you prepare the teachers or train them, help them, support them to be able to run all of these challenges?
By selecting the teachers, their own skills were more important than the subject they study. So we had a teacher who was a biology teacher, but she was also child pedagogue, a teacher who studied France, but she was also a psychologist. We had a teacher of gymnastics, but he was also a sub-coach of the Dutch korfball team. We had a teacher who was a physician, but he knew everything about stars and the planets and everything. So what they were was more important than what they knew. There's a problem in finding teachers in the Netherlands. There's a lack of 10,000 of teachers in the Netherlands. We have never a problem to find a teacher for Agora. because everyone who sent in an application, you knew that he was thinking. When you make the decision after, because there were also a few they had to apply, but you can see that in the first sentence of the letter. But everyone who get knowledge to Agora and decided, I want to work with those idiots, that was very good. And then you could see, I want to have a combination between the who are you and what did you study. So that was no problem at all. And then when I started half a year before the children came, one day in a week, we were together because we had to find out everything together. In that time, with 6 people together. And that was very nice. That half year together working on this project I look back to that with very much joy. And after that, when the group started, I asked new teachers to apply around Christmas. And then I start in February to prepare the new teachers for the next year and give them some money for that, of a half a day in a week together. Could show them how we practiced the ideas.
Beautiful. I mean, it's a very special kind of person who can work in such a messy, real world environment.
It delivered a sub problem. And it was when those teachers came, because I made this Agora in a big school community of 1,800 students. And there were teachers from the original school who applied for Agora. But the problem was, when I said come to Agora, I had problems with my colleagues because I took their best teacher. So the best teachers go to Agora. So that was very nice. But gave me a problem with my company.
You lose a lot of friends that way, Hans.
Yeah. Sometimes it was a lonely job.
So we've had such a fantastic discussion, and I do have an eye on the time for us here. Are there any aspects of the school that we haven't talked about yet that you feel are important to mention for people who are new to this idea?
We started this problem with the curriculum class-based, level-based system, but my experience is now that the rest of my school are now interested in some aspects of Agora. So now, after 5 years, they start looking what can we use from Agora in our basic system. Now that's a good process. We oblige the parents to bring their knowledge into the school. So everyone is good in something and know someone who's good in something, and they were challenged to bring those knowledge into the school in form of given lessons or take children. We had a big natural historical museum, someone who worked there with fossils of dinosaurs. So take some children from the school, go to the museum, let them see what you're doing there. Peter brought several times his knowledge into the school. There was a volleyball coach who took some children into the gymnastic room and told them how he worked. So that variety of subjects came into the school, and the children could sign in. They're not obliged to visit those lessons, but they could sign in. And when someone came with a subject and only 2 children signed in, our job to say to their parents, you're welcome, but know that there are not 100 children who are listening to your lesson, but only 2. So that was nice as well. So you could see, I think it's still working now, Peter.
Yeah. I mean, they have a couple a day, really. And it can either be parents or, like Hans says, the extended network of parents who know people and invite them to come in, and you just have an hour, to do something with the kids or to take them somewhere. I did a whole thing with the intention experiments, and had them try to read the hidden cards and stuff like that.
And there was a pilot of a big jumbo jet. He came in his uniform with all his stripes and took children into a story about law in the air, because when you are a commander of a plane, you have to be not only the one who brings the people safe from one place to another, but you are also policeman and judge as well, and doctor as well. So he thought about those things. It was very nice.
It's interesting to combine the community to include their sense of meaning, their sense of contribution as well, that it's not just limited to the student's interest, the student's sense of meaning, their purpose, but you're bringing that one layer out of being able to bring the parents in and say, well, this is what's meaningful to me. And I guess in some sense, act as almost role models to the others about the opportunities and new perspectives that are out there.
We didn't buy books for the children. And instead of that, we divided the money and gave every child a budget. And he could use his budget for whatever he wanted to do, but he was not allowed to save or to go to the stock market with that money. But for the rest, he could buy pencils or paint or going with a train to Amsterdam to go to a museum or whatsoever. So they had their own budget.
And they all got a laptop as well.
Again, it's just so much trusting in people. Do sometimes the children break that trust? And if so, how would you kind of approach that?
Yeah, of course. Of course, they're not model children. They make mistakes. And they were at a certain point, they were allowed to make those mistakes. They were corrected when they made the co-students were a victim of their behavior. And when you are too noisy, your co-student is a victim of your behavior. When you do some nasty things, social network, then your co-students are victim of your behavior. No, in that way, you are just helping them to do the good things. Well, but that was not the problem, because when my children were young, they got punished when they did things they were wrong. And I loved them very much. So that was quite normal in Agora as well. So I make objection against the word freedom and Agora. They were free to learn what they want. But for the rest, they had to learn in a community with the rules we made together. And you have to keep those rules. And that's the fact, no discussion. When you want to make it better, you are allowed to give us a suggestion that becomes better, and we listen to you, because every day the group started up with a group meeting with his own coach to speak about those things, and it was for 10 minutes, 20 minutes, then the normal process started. They were always connected with how we did it together.
Yeah, and connecting all of those aspects, if somebody makes a mistake and it hurts somebody else, then we bring them together to work out that conflict. And if one of the things we've talked about with progressive education or child-centered is that the children's opinions are important. And so a lot of schools are democratic models. Is there a democratic element to Agora?
Yeah, an element, yeah. Because you can vote together by kind of referendum, think about an idea which is not realistic, or if they don't recognize the consequences of the long term of their ideas, then you say, yeah, nice, but we don't do it. So I was quite autocratic in that way. There are borders, and between those borders, you can do what you decide together.
That's probably a good spot for wrapping up, because I feel that in a nutshell summarizes this. It's like you have the freedom to pursue what you want, but you're in a community and there are borders in place so that you can pursue what is meaningful and of interest to you. Peter and Hans, thank you so much for your time. This has been a fascinating conversation, and both Brendan and I and our listeners as well benefit so much from being able to visit your schools in this sense, to get a sense of what life is like for the students, for the staff, and in this case, for the parents as well in the school. So thank you so much for highlighting everything you have with us today.
Thank you very much for that.
Our pleasure.
Yeah, thank you very much. I'm happy that people like you are in the world doing these wonderful things.
Yeah, Brendan and I, sometimes we get discouraged every now and then it's conversations like this that I think like, okay, good. There are other people out there with similar ideas. So it's nourishing for us as well.
I wish you good luck.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Okay.
Enjoy your day.